It's episode 8 of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. I'm your host, Isekai Sensei-sama, aka Brad, and as always, I'm joined in the Weeb Cabal by Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Sashiburi.
And Kermit D. Grog, aka Andrew.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
If you've listened to us before, thanks for coming back. But if you're new here, the three of us are friends who have been watching anime and having conversations about anime and manga and the culture around them. So we decided to share those conversations with the world. Before we dive into everything, a few news items. There's actually a lot of news today.
Wow. Busy news day.
So Frieren Beyond Journey's End, Volume 5, is going to be out on July 19th.
Excitement.
We all love that series. We're really happy it's becoming popular, so make sure you check that out and let us know what you think. Spy Family Season 1, Part 1 just finished at the time that you're listening to this.
Yes.
We
not
still
for us
have
yet. We
one
have not
episode
seen
to
it yet.
go.
Hasn't happened yet. Bond is coming.
And we absolutely love this show. So make sure you check that out and let us know what you think. Season 1, Part 2 hasn't had its release date announced yet, but they are going to make it.
Why is it Season 1, Part 2, and not just Season 2?
I don't know, but I looked it up, and that's what it said.
Maybe it's like the new thing where on Netflix where it's technically a cartoon show. Here's Season 1, and then Season 2 coming, but Season 2 is actually just Part 2 of the original set of episodes they bought for production, and they just make it look like it's bigger and probably a bunch of legal hoobity-hoop to pay everybody less because screw Netflix.
I assume it has to, it probably has to do with like Season 1, all 24 episodes or whatever it ends up as, is one cohesive piece that you could potentially stop there.
No.
Tough to say without the release date, but I'd guess Season 1 being split into 2 parts means it's not going to be a full year before they get it back on television.
Yeah.
But like I said, we love Spy Family.
Immaculate.
It's
I don't think
so
I've seen
good.
an anime that has ever been... from a manga that was already just kind of perfect at what it was doing to an anime that is just, chef's kiss.
Yeah. So, like I said, let us know what you think of that too. Chainsaw Man manga is getting a second part, which is going to start on July 13th, very shortly.
So we'll be able to talk about it next episode. Still no idea what that's going to be. Didn't know a couple years ago when it ended and they told us right away there'd be a part 2. Extra don't know now that time has passed.
I'm pretty sure it's Chainsaw Man in high school, right?
That's what he said, but I don't know what that means in the context of everything we've already gone through.
Denji is the new Peter Parker.
And you can read that on Viz, so be sure to check that out.
$2, just do it. It's such a good deal.
I'm going to announce this here and now, which means I get to hold Ben to it. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our new series that we're going to be releasing in the coming month called Heroin Addiction.
Spell that. Literally, please spell it for everybody involved.
Yes, that is spelled HEROINE.
Like a hero, but a heroine.
Yes, heroin. If you know another way to pronounce that, let me know.
Heroine.
Heroine, yeah.
So that series is going to be just short episodes where Ben and I review shoujo and josei manhwa. So that should be fun.
Have fun with that, you two. I'll be doing something else.
I think that'll about cover it for news. Don't forget to hit us up on social media and let us know what you think about all those series and the podcast in general. We'd love to hear from you. Ben, I'm a little bit concerned because I see a full notebook on your lap. Do you want to maybe tell us what's going on there?
Yes, I'd like to ask a series of leading questions to direct the discussion around to something that really grinds my gears.
Oh, that sounds great because I have literally nothing to say on this topic to start off.
That sounds like what I did. I literally earlier today asked a question of Brad because I wanted to complain about something but wanted to do so slightly more politely. So I formed it in the phrase of a question.
Yes.
And then just came back to what I was angry about.
So for the audience, we're going to talk about translations.
Ooh,
Yes, I would say for the vast majority of us, we do not speak Japanese. We certainly do not read it.
At least not well.
Yes, and we are consuming this through the lens of translators. So I think a very important question we don't really talk about a lot is what makes a translation good. I'm interested. I have a list of things I think make a translation good, but I'm interested in what you guys look for.
Here's a free-form test. I'll grade your work afterwards, says
I'll tell you the right
Bento.
answer, yeah, after you're done. But
So, all right, I'll jump into this. For me, I look for if the translation gives me enough clues that they're actually following the way that it was originally written. So things like you'll read the way people speak to each other, and I'm relatively familiar with the polite culture of how you address people in Japanese. So, I mean, my name is Isekai Sensei-sama, right? I should know something about it. But what I'll see a lot is there's different ways that different translators go about it. And so sometimes you'll have somebody's addressing a prince. And so in the original, they're saying Richard Sama, right? Mm-hmm. However, in the translation, they will say Prince Richard. And what's important is the translator always makes sure to include the title of the person when they're doing that, because in a lot of cases, when the person addresses that important person without Sama, that's showing a level of familiarity, which is very important, usually to the story, but especially culturally. So when the heroine just says Richard, then it's like, oh my God, she just said his name. Yes. Oh, that's so crazy.
They're dating, obviously.
Well, we're getting in deep right off the bat, but I feel like that's what you just talked about, Brad, captures one of those big ideas of just, can you culturally get across what's in the original to, I guess for us specifically, like American English? Can you get concepts across and ideas that our language and way of operating doesn't have vectors for normally like capturing? Like your whole like the Sama, and you say, oh, Prince Richard, or just other
or all the
concepts.
Various like you can read Midoriya as Deku. And all those weird things.
Translator Uzumaki is like a thing. It's you can Light Yagami, but you can read his thing as something else. I'm doing this really poorly because
no, I think that's a really good point, because sometimes I tend not to pick up on this when I'm just reading things for fun. But now that I'm thinking about it, my knowledge of those cultural norms is sort of automatic to me now. I pick up on that stuff a lot because I've read about it and I understand how it works to a degree. And that actually makes me wonder, like, if someone is just opening this for the first time, they have no concept of Japanese culture at all, are they going to pick up on that? And I don't know the answer to that, because it's so natural for me now to just know what's going on with that stuff.
Either of you, have you ever had the opportunity to see or read the same piece of work translated by two different people?
Yes, actually.
No, but that sounds like a thing I really want to do.
So if you've been around like anime long enough, I mean, I've seen the legendary ocean dub of DBZ.
Okay,
and then,
sort of then. If we're saying dub, like we're saying subs for things. And
I'm willing
dubs.
to say, have you seen an anime with two different scripts? Basically.
So I'm going
to try to keep this to just subs, because I feel like once you get into translations to dubs, that's a whole other ball game. But yes, I have seen a couple situations where I went from, we'll say, watching anime in less than scrupulous means and moving to official, or vice versa, where I had to go, oh, you guys were using this like specific translated word, and now these people aren't translating it, or they're translating it differently, and trying to understand what was going on.
Yeah, I think I really only have one good example of this in anime.
Okay.
Most of my experience with it is in manga, especially manhwa, because a lot of the manhwa I read, there will be a unofficial translation that comes out, and then potentially months later the official one comes out, and you can tell the difference very easily then. But for anime, very specifically, and I think this is a really good example, and we talked about this a little bit before, but way back when I was just an anime baby, I started watching One Piece, and
you're That's way late in the game compared to where I started.
True enough. However, when I started watching it, it was, we were torrenting things, right?
Yeah.
And there was one big name in the game, and that was Kaizuko fan subs. Yep. And their subs were like, you couldn't even compare them to anyone else's because they went way over the top.
They're better than the officials.
Exactly. Yeah. They had like animated subtitles when people would do their attacks and stuff. And I can't speak specifically to the translation because in fact, I don't think I ever actually watched an older episode with an official translation. But there were definitely different points where you could sort of pick up on something and go, oh, in the fan sub, they translated that thing that he's saying as this, but now in the official one, they're sort of just glossing over that. They're not. And that was how it was for Kaizuko, is that they went way in depth and that classic thing with the Naruto fan sub with a Keikaku means plan.
That was Death Note. That was Death Note. Is all according to. I don't remember if I ever confirmed if that was real or not.
That was in Naruto too.
I know it originally from the Death
I don't
Note
know
one. It's
where
the image where it says all according to Keikaku with a little asterisk star, and then at the bottom of the star it says Keikaku means plan, which is now and has been for a long time a meme and a bit that I still do now because I think it's funny.
A legendarily bad translation note that made its way into the lexicon.
Yeah. The thing is, though, is that, back then Kaizuko they were going so hard into that. And when I switched over to like everything being official translations, especially like getting into Crunchyroll and stuff, years and years ago, the official translations were terrible. Like they spent hardly any time on it. And it's a stark contrast.
When you say that, do you mean the manga? Do you mean the anime? Do you mean the 4Kids dub that didn't care?
Oh, I'm not even talking about
whole other conversation.
So that is a whole other conversation.
Let me tell you.
Specifically
let's rein us in a little bit from that. Yeah.
Specifically about official translations years ago versus today. Because what I find is nowadays animes become so much more popular. They put a lot more effort into translations.
Crunchyroll is not the worst offender. Netflix is the worst offender.
Yes.
Of legendarily bad translations.
Yeah, there's
subtitles.
I only watched like 3 or 4 anime on Netflix, but yes, I definitely agree. There's times when I'm watching them, it's just like, what?
See, I don't actually know that I would agree that they're putting more effort into it now. They're certainly throwing more at it, but I think the translators are largely underpaid, undervetted. I think you pass a very simple test, if there is even a test, and then they let you go, and they give you very little time to do it, and I don't know if they ever clean it up later. So I
think they do.
I don't know if they clean it up for like a Blu-ray release. I haven't bought an anime Blu-ray in years. What I said makes a translation good is like in order of importance. Original meaning is preserved as much as possible. We don't lose information. The original tone is preserved. So secondary to the meaning, sometimes it's necessary to change the meaning to make a joke work. Like Spy Family, Anya saying "ooting" instead of what she's actually saying, or "thank you very much" instead of "arigazimasu." Like whatever. Capturing
the idea in a way that we as English speakers, without having to do a note of Anya makes a pun here, like instead of having to explain the joke, to have it come to us naturally.
No, and honestly, I touched on this in the intro a little bit, but like Spy Family does such a good job with that. They really sell the fact that Anya is a child.
We can't get distracted on this again, Brad. Because we
this is the translation.
About this every episode that Spy Family started having an anime.
This is relevant.
Okay.
The fact that they translate her messing up her words also in a way that you can understand as an English speaker that she is messing up her words.
So that I think is the difference between like translation and localization. So when you translate something, you just literally tell somebody what the person said. When you localize it, you take it upon yourself to say it in a way that conveys the same tone and feeling. Like Anya is literally mispronouncing arigato gozaimasu, but I said thank you very much or something or thank you very much or something like that, because it ruins the joke if I have to explain.
Yeah, it's not worth it. What you're this is a child speaking poorly because it's a child. Like, to have to explain that is just like, what am I even doing here?
So, and how do you actually literally translate the mispronunciation of arigato?
Well, and there's a way you could do it where you just put in a bad translation note, which I think that's not good translation. This is one where you should localize.
However,
I think there are moments of translation notes, but not what you're talking about. So I'm going to shut up.
Right,
We'll talk about that later.
This is my question then: is when you do that localization, I think you have to make a choice in each part, because do you need to preserve the Japanese cultural meaning of something, or does it make more sense to westernize it?
You've hit my point 3 of my 4 point.
I'm just sprinting ahead.
Yeah, which is you need to balance that all the localization strikes a balance between exoticism and erasure. Like the famous Pokemon jelly donut.
Oh, yes. Eat your hamburger, Phoenix.
Yeah, where what is clearly onigiri is a jelly donut.
Yeah.
Because and Satoshi becomes Ash, and they did that with the original Sailor Moon as well, where Usagi becomes Serena, and they just wipe out any trace of it being from Japan because the names are too weird.
I am gonna be real. I'm terrible at names. I'm extra terrible at names that aren't in a language that I speak, and having as a thought, I mean, obviously I'll never do it and it wouldn't work because certain people would watch it in one way and certain people watch another. Nobody would know who was who, but like, it's kind of nice having names that aren't like, that's why I kind of like One Piece. It's like Luffy, Sanji, Zolo, like it's Nami, like they're very, I mean, maybe they're Japanese names as well. I don't know.
Zoro,
Chopper, Frankie, like they're like names to my brain.
And I think I've seen a lot of that lately.
I understand Ben's thing of like, it is kind of erasure. It's just like, yeah, this isn't from Japan at all. But also there's that little selfish bit of me of like, if the names were kind of in English, I might actually remember the names instead of like every anime we've watched now. It's like, oh yeah, that guy, the guy who does this. And like one of you has to go, oh, this guy, the name. And I go, oh yeah, sure.
But I think that they're doing that a lot more now. In a lot of the new series, the names are much easier for Western audiences to.
Well, I think they're pulling into more Western things, but like besides like 3 major characters, one of them is named All Might. I don't think I could give you a name of anybody I don't think I could give you a Japanese name of anybody in My Hero Academia besides like Midoriya and Bakugo.
Well, and let me ask you this then, because there is it's not. It goes back to that balance. So there are things with names like Midoriya. Midori means green. His hair is green. Somebody would pick up on that.
Yeah, we wouldn't.
Bakugo sounds like the word for explosion. Somebody would pick up on that. What's the one guy's name? Tokoyami, the dark bird guy.
Yeah.
Yami means dark.
Toki's bird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something similar to it.
Or Tori.
That's a little on the nose, don't you think?
But like we don't get that at all. You would have to have a note about it because you'd have to change their names, and it's like, is there even a pun that would capture those ideas in English?
Is it better to call him Naruto Uzumaki and have that be like an exotic sounding phrase when to the people who it was intended for, it sounds like fish cake swirl?
I don't know. Like that's the thing. I don't when I read about these, it's like, do they read it and know? It's like, oh, you can read his kanji like this or like this, and it captures this dual meaning, or like these words mean these things. It's like we have names that like kind of have like, oh, this name's kind of this, like as connotations, but there's not a lot of times where we have like, oh, this means this. And it's like, when a Japanese reader reads that or hears it, do they just instantly make that connection, or do they have to like think about it? And I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about.
So I think there's an interesting point there, because I think there's plenty of things in English that we use, as a name for something that means something. I mean, just off the top of my head, there's lots of things that are named red, right? That's a normal name for stuff, but it's a color, you know? And so, you know, I think it tends, in Japanese, they sort of do that a lot more, but it's not unprecedented.
Well, and we have a little bit. I mean, we have like with comic booky sounding names like Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Wait, that's just
Clark
alliteration
Kent.
because
We do that. There's a tendency for that, and a lot of those.
But it's not
Otto
like his
Octavius?
name is like Strong Man.
Otto Octavius has how many limbs?
He has 8.
You mean like strong bad and strong sad
And Strong
Man?
Man. Yes.
Yeah.
But
So-
they're not.
Well, and then let's maybe a less contentious.
Superman isn't his normal name isn't that.
My personal philosophy is don't change names.
What if there are names
Generally
that aren't
speaking,
people?
I would agree
That's
with you.
where I don't change names of people or places. That would be my general thinking.
Okay, I can agree with that.
But what about Kage Bunshin no Jutsu?
Ooh, super moves.
That should be Shadow Clone skill. That doesn't sound exotic to the people hearing it. It's not like us saying a spell in Latin.
I think in the
Interesting.
official,
Okay.
I think in the
dub,
official they do
they
call
say-
it Shadow Clone skill. Or
I think they call it Shadow Clone Jutsu.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
call it jutsu, at least from what I remember back in the day. Well,
Okay.
that brings me to.
but that pissed a lot of people off when they did that.
Well, okay, so there's always going to be people like I don't think any of us are. You need to stay to the exact translation, or in certain cases, don't translate it at all. And I don't
Let's
think
see.
any of the three of us are that like diehard about.
Well, yeah,
Oh.
that's why I watched the sub instead. But we're not going to get into that in this episode.
Well, and there's no real like right or wrong answer here. I think it's just always interesting to ask, like, for example, why do I hold the names of people and places like sacred?
because they're proper nouns. It literally in our lexicon
Yeah.
we call them proper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
They are on a somewhat of a pedestal.
I think that's where I would use the translation note to be like, hey, this person would associate this guy named Naruto Uzumaki with the Naruto Uzumaki that's placed in ramen, and he likes ramen, and that's the joke.
Yeah. But, you know, what's interesting is I think, like, for me personally, I probably for you guys as well, if we watch an anime and the subtitles, and I would say official subtitles even, are not good, that can affect our overall impression of the anime.
Yeah.
So you might have an anime that for a Japanese person, you know, listening to it in their native language, they'd be like, oh, this is the best anime ever. And then we get it and we're like, no, I don't like this.
So have you ever encountered an anime where without speaking the language, and we're talking official releases for now. Have you ever encountered an official translation that you thought was bad? Like, for example, even as a 10-year-old child, not knowing what onigiri is, I know that's not a jelly donut.
But did that take away from your appreciation? Not to say that it was a good thing that they did it, but
That's when I became aware that something wasn't lining up. It did cause a dissonance for me. And when in Yu-Gi-Oh, when that kid had a New York accent and his name's Joey, but his best friend's named Yugi,
yeah.
and nobody ever mentions that. and isn't it weird that Angel Grove looks so much like the Tokyo skyline? And I did start to realize that what I was being told was not necessarily what the story was. And that actually is kind of what caused me to get into anime and Japanese. And I did start looking for better translations. As probably a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, I knew that 4Kids was a shit production company.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Which,
yeah.
like, I don't pay attention to that with any other media I consume. They made it so egregious that I couldn't help but notice I was being lied to, and it felt like being lied to.
I'm failing to think of an example for myself, but I also tend to gloss over stuff like that a lot. Like, I mean, I said that bad translation could make me feel worse about the anime in general. However, a lot of times I'm just thinking, like, if I see a bad translation, I sort of replace it in my head and move on. Like, generally,
You try to
I
make
know,
it work.
Right. I know what they were going for, and so I'm just like,
But
okay.
sometimes you wouldn't be able to do that. So
Yeah.
okay, I've got two prong paths from here, and I think I'll start with one of so Brett, Ben, quickly run me through what you said made a good translation.
What I say makes a good translation is in this order: Original meaning is preserved. Original tone is preserved. The localization strikes a balance between exoticism and erasure. And in cases where translation is impossible or unwieldy, the notes or other material is included to explain the foreign concept.
Okay, so, and I'm happy that I can see it from where I'm sitting on my shelf. So, one of my favorite, I know we're not trying to get into subs v dubs, but one of my favorite dubs of all time is Boba 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 Bo, where they knew right out of the gate, there is no way that we can translate the entire, all of these Japanese specific puns and wordplay. So they just tossed almost all of it out the window and just wrote new jokes because there was no way to meaningfully translate it in a way that would not just be constantly, this is this, this is this, this is this.
I would call that.
Is this an outlier?
I would call that hyper localization.
I think, yeah, that could be a valid term. I don't think that's a bad thing, though. I mean, if there is just no way to bring the original jokes, they're just so specific to Japanese, not just culture, but like pop culture, things that you could never know the reference of, even if you studied.
Yeah. Although
when there's so many, because there are things where I've seen like, freaking the back pages of those Parasite books where the translator puts in his notes of like, oh, this was a reference to this, but nobody in America would get that, so I changed it to a reference to this to capture the same idea. Like, I love those notes.
Okay,
I could read books and books of those notes.
My question then is, in cases like that where Bobo 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 Bo is probably the best example and maybe the only time you would do this.
Well, I've got some other bridges from that one actually then. So
would you like there to be two versions?
No.
So you get an English translation that's a localization and an English translation that's not a localization, so that you can, as someone who knows Japanese culture, you could read that and get most of it.
I mean, that's to say you could get it. I feel like a lot of it was like wordplay and references to things that like not even just us.
Well, there's like wordplay references to like obscure 80s Tokyo City pop.
Well, that's definitely
it becomes something. It becomes something new. And another example I remember, at least two, one that I'm aware of and one that I watched, was where the original work, the translation kind of transmogrified it into something else of, I guess depending on who you are, greater or lesser value. But I remember a Yu-Gi-Oh knockoff called Duel Masters that was a straightforward card game in Japan, and when it came to America, again, I know we don't want to get into dubs v subs too much, is they made into a comedy show where there's like a bunch of bits going on. Also, I was remembered reading about from when I was like Googling Bobobo as a child on the internet, was like Samurai Pizza Cats was like a really kind of popular
Samurai Pizza Cats.
Yeah, it was like the original was kind of straightforward, and then when they translated it, they added some more zest to it,
there's
and
really
it kind of became something new.
There's a really there's a couple of like really
Power Rangers,
Shin-Chan. There was one. I have the DVDs.
Ghost? Is it Ghost Story?
Ghost Story.
Ghost Story. Well, that one's even.
They didn't even have the.
Even further off the.
They didn't even have the
resurrection
script. They just ad-libbed.
Yeah. Oh my god!
They changed the entire text of the show just based on what it looked like was happening.
So was that an improvement? If the original was just a bland nothing, was a wrong translation a better translation?
It was
than a straightforward one.
It was essentially
it more artistically meaningful. Was it more good?
It was essentially a different work.
Yes.
I mean, that was like, it's closer to maybe fan fiction.
Imagine how much fun they had working on that.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, and I love
probably
it.
The Bobo guys, because they're just like bullshitting in the booth, and I love it.
I've never watched the Ghost Stories sub. I love the dub.
Exactly.
And it's kind of even offensive now. It did not age
well. 100%. But I never watched all of it. A lot of my friends were into it a lot more than I was. Just like, I'm not about this.
But yeah, it's 100% its own thing.
Yeah.
And that like I said, there's no right or wrong answers to these questions, but like I have no idea what the creator of Ghost Stories was trying to tell me, because I never listened to him. I only listened to this new thing.
So I have an example I wanted to talk about where they're not able to translate it, and this goes back to your proper nouns, Ben, is that if they were to translate it, they would lose a joke that does work for some people who understand, but it doesn't translate at all into English. The series is called Komi Can't Communicate, The anime is on Netflix right now. I've been reading the manga for a while, and the translation, or rather the original Japanese name, is Komi-san wa Komiishu desu. And that's the joke. It's this whole series is jokes about names.
She's a Komi show. Yeah.
Right.
What does that mean?
It's a kind of a portmanteau of Komi, her name, communication, and show, which is like a disorder. She has a
communication disorder.
So we have a thing with translation is that Ben knows about it to an extent, and Brad does, so they can kind of pick up on this, and I don't, and I can't. So this joke is just vaporized, which I guess is why they tried to translate it. But if they kept it as is, it would be gone.
Well, and so the series does stand on its own. It's got enough in there. It's really good. But it's now in being an English reader, I am missing an entire layer of it. So I understand a couple of them, but a lot of the times I'll be reading through this and I will send Ben stuff and be like, hey, what does this mean? What is this person's name?
And you have to look it up, because what was supposed to get a chuckle gets a... I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, that's very clever. Not like, oh, look at that guy. His name is this and he does this.
Right. Well, the thing is like literally every single character's name is a pun in some way. So all of these kids in high school, they have all these weird quirks and stuff, and their name always relates to the quirk. And now that I know that, I look for it carefully when they're introducing characters, but I still don't actually know what it is most of the time. And like I said, I'll send it over to Ben and be like, hey, translate this for me. But that's one of the things is like I'm missing that. But you can't change their names to something in English that would go along with that.
So
because
consistently, yeah.
I gotta find a good example. Najimi, does that mean something?
Not to me.
All right, that's a bad example.
Bad example.
Moving on. But there's a lot of Komi is the main one. The whole series is the pun on Komi
communication.
Can't communicate.
Which it sounds like they translated that well, because you've got Komi can't communicate.
Well,
you've
got
that triple.
But
but
Komi
and communicate, like it works.
But the fact that they translated it,
that one
does. You lose that joke. So when I first started reading it, Komi can't communicate. I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't get it.
But I think Komi can't communicate is like the best you can do.
Yeah.
With that, Komi can't communicate.
Right, with the translation.
Something
but that's what I'm saying. You're losing the pun.
But they kept the alliteration.
They kept the idea,
that
the
was
heart.
True.
Yeah.
But like, there's always going to be something. I mean, we talked about earlier about like things about like honorifics of like, oh, they always said Sama, but this time they dropped it. It's like we don't have a meaningful way to capture that. That is just an entire level of social communicating that you can do in a story that is just, there's no way to get it across as cleanly and as normally as it is in literally any Japanese work.
Correct.
Cursing, especially. Cursing and rudeness.
It's like when they get stuff translated from English, just like everything come off as just flippant. Like they have to now generate all of right?
They do, yeah.
That means they're making up information that isn't present. They're painting in another color. Like they paint in a color that we can't see, which means when they paint our paintings, they have to somehow work that color in a way that was never there in the beginning.
I think the reverse happens as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they lose stuff from us too.
Yeah, well, right. In translating from Japanese, we lose a lot of that, the relevancy of polite communication that they do.
Yeah.
Like they might. There's lots of examples where someone will introduce someone to someone else, and they'll introduce them in a way, and the person they're being introduced to is like, well, I can't believe they're saying that like that. How could they be that close to have done?
And we just unless it's really particular,
right.
We have no means of really capturing that without being really ridiculous because we don't have that level of social decorum. So that kind of frequency of storytelling detail is just you have to work really hard. Or just I remember from some video game translation books that I've read of just oh, this man speaks in a way that is just that old men speak in Japan. So, but we had to capture that short in the little bit we had. I think this was for the original Legend of Zelda, to capture that idea in English, because we don't have just like old people use this word which keys in that this is an old person talking, and there was like a bunch of that where it's just like our speech doesn't have that level of detail, our written word doesn't have that level of detail to capture so much information about a speaker like instantaneously.
Japanese has, I think, a subtlety that English doesn't have, and English has a sarcasm that Japanese doesn't have.
Yeah.
And there are funny ways they do that, though. Like in a dub, if somebody has like the Kansai dialect, they'll make them Southern.
They'll make them Southern. And
That's like
sometimes it'll make
all
sense,
the time.
and sometimes it stands out. Especially when I'm reading it in a sub, stands out like a sore thumb, where it's like, this just doesn't feel like, because it's like none of these people look like people who would speak like that, because when I hear that dialect, I go, somebody's going to look like I'm expecting to see the little like wheat, hayseed in their mouth or something.
Right.
Well, and
it's like, I know, like I've experienced that too. I've been around long enough and read those notes that I know that's what they're going for, because it's trying to capture that idea of this person sounds different than everybody else. This person is from somewhere else.
Well, in particular, there's like the Tokyo dialect is like the official dialect, and they have kind of a low opinion of the Kansai dialect.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's us Northerners
yeah,
against
in the South.
the Southern twang, but also like there's different ways of approaching it. But it's like you have to. That is a cultural thing that we don't have, so you have to paint with the colors that we have. And does that capture the idea in the same way that it captures it for them? And kinda.
So I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier, where you have to pick and choose what's relevant to the situation. Personally, I like to have the notes. I like them to leave it as much as possible as the original meaning, and then give me a note. And sometimes that means leaving the Japanese word in there because there's not a good translation for it.
There's not a good quick translation.
And that brings me back to Kazuko fan subs, because there was lots of debate.
Ooh, I've been literally wanting to talk about certain One Piece words that because I was hopping between, because when I was reading them, it's
the big one being Nakama.
Oh, I was going to talk about another one, but okay.
So
you guys keep joking about this, and I don't think I get it.
I played the video for you multiple times, Ben. Brad, can we just cut that video in?
You are my Nakama.
It's just like, you are my Nakama. That's all I remember.
Yeah. Well, so
it's a Pro ZD video about, I think it was like fan subs versus the official one, and then it's like the actual one. It's like, you Sasuke are my brother, and then in like the fan dub, it's like, okay, bitch, ore, you are my Nakama. And then Nakama has a star, and it's this entire write-up where it's like, Nakama is a word from One Piece that means brother, and then it just keeps going into more and more detail. And like, that is why I make that joke all the time.
You're getting it very wrong, so I need to correct you.
Okay. That's my funny version of it.
Nakama is more closely translated to like family. Brother would be Aniki, right?
I can't read the bit. I don't have my phone with me, but I don't mean that literally. I mean, that's what it says on the screen for this video that I'm referencing.
Maybe.
Like Kyodai or
but yeah, so
I remember Aniki.
The reason that joke exists is because back in the day, I think there was some stuff in Naruto about this as well, but the main one I remember is the Kaizuko fan subs, because I remember being on forums and stuff and reading this, and there was debate of like, should we translate it to my crew, or should we leave it as Nakama, because Nakama means something much more important than just my crew.
Oh, that would be a good way for like have you ever seen Firefly?
The show?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mal is always like, you're part of my crew. What more do I need to say?
But they throw in Mandarin.
Yeah, but he always says like crew, and to him what crew means. Is it maybe the same thing like that? But like, there's a lot of inflection in his voice and mannerisms that tell you that,
which we wouldn't be able to get in a written thing for manga or like a sub where I wouldn't be able to understand. I can't pick up the inflection.
You might be able to liken it to that. But my understanding of it from reading all of these nerds online, what they were saying about it is that even if you were to say, my crew, so much emotion, whatever it is, like, it still doesn't quite translate.
Maybe
Yeah.
is it just like a very familiar thing for some? It's a very vulnerable thing.
It's
for
basically
somebody to say?
as close as you can be to people that aren't blood related.
Yeah, which is probably not something they throw around lightly.
And is a
Right.
theme
Like, you
of
just can't
One
understand the
Piece.
weight.
So like
Yeah.
it's kind of important. Like in this case, this is important to the themes of the story, but also it's like when you're translating that, do you know that at the time? If there isn't more of it to know that it's important.
This isn't your boss saying, we're like a family here. This
Yeah,
this is like
we work hard, we play hard.
Yeah.
F off.
I mean, I think it means the same thing, except Luffy actually means it.
Well, yeah, that's the point. That's why
Yeah.
Luffy's dope.
But so how much are you willing to learn about another culture to understand?
Well, and that's the thing is I think that for me, like I said, I'd rather read as close to the original as possible and have those notes that sort of explain it to me. And what I found is that I'll read a series that does have some notes in it and I'll learn those things. And then when I'm reading another series that they either don't put the note and they just leave the Japanese word or whatever, like people start to assume that the nerds who are reading this, the weebs that are reading the manga, know what these words are because they're so pervasive in
and
the
worse,
community.
the weebs that are reading it start to assume that they know what they
But
are.
how do you decide which word gets translated and which doesn't? How do you
Well,
know
that's
which ones are the
certainly a good
load-bearing pillars?
Yeah.
Because I always think of One Piece, because like I said, like as my over a decade reading One Piece, I'm hopping between originally like the 4Kids dub and then reading the official manga and then like sub translations on an anime and then official ones and then manga translations, sometimes official, sometimes not. And it's like getting like, and I've had this with a couple different situations of hopping between official and non-official where it's like, oh, in the official one they translate this as Warlord of the Sea, and in this one it's like Yonko, and I'm like, and at one point I like hopped in on an episode with a fan sub and they said that, I'm like, I don't know what that is, or like Shishibuki or something, and it's like that one's one of the 7 warlords,
And
the
I
Yonko are like the big 4,
I think what it comes down to
and that was one where
is-
it's just like, what is this? I don't know what this is, because the translation, depending on where you are, they either don't translate the word at all and they just go, this is what it is, and you just understand that word captures what they've been telling you it is, or it's just, this is the word that's what it means. I remember hopping between official and fan subs back in the day of when Kill la Kill was coming out, and like I think the one I was watching for ages was calling it like Kamui or something like that. I don't remember the exact translation. It's like a pun off of like God robe, but that another one was literally, I think a fan sub was literally translating it as God robe, and I just wasn't, it took me a while when I was watching that to parse they were saying the same thing, but one translated it and one didn't. And I was like kind of caught in the middle of how I felt about that, because it's like I understood what a kamui was then. It was the clothing that was essentially like alive and had power in it, and I'd pieced that together. But if it was just always called a god cloak or a god robe, that had certain connotations that it made more sense then, but also somewhere I felt like I lost what it was of like the definition in my head.
I'm going
that's
to
like in Dragon Ball, Kami. It's his
Oh god,
name.
I don't think we still haven't really solved that one.
I'm going to date myself here
Go for it.
by saying that when I started reading
Ben
manga,
X Ben.
I started reading manga, in the back of most manga, they had a glossary of honorifics and sort of common terms.
See, that's
didn't
great.
translate.
We should have
Yeah,
like
Parasite has
we
that
should
at the
have
start
like
of every book.
a weeb dictionary or something. That's like,
Well, and I
here's
think-
all the most common things that you need to know when you read these.
I think most manga readers, and if you're listening to this podcast and you've listened this far in, you're probably on team. Yeah, I like to learn a lot about the culture, especially Japanese culture.
I hope
Yeah.
so.
But-
Otherwise, I'd be really bored.
I think a lot of, especially younger people, know the honorifics. At least San-kun, Sama, even though
Chan,
Kiryu-chan.
Anya-chan.
But then there's the other stuff like Baka and I don't know. Bakayero and Kisama and Time.
You know, Baka's really important
Gosh, I want to
because
play another Yakuza game.
there's a consistent joke in anime where you have the crow fly across, right?
Yeah, and we don't have that.
I don't get that.
Oh, you never seen it? It's
How do you not know about it? The two of us do.
No. We watch different stuff.
No, it's just this is in a lot of things. It's like a comedy beat.
So the crow makes a sound. I think it's baka.
Oh, is that okay? I was just saying that it's like a comedy beat.
Is it like the tumbleweed?
Kinda.
Well, sort of, but like somebody will do something stupid and they'll be bak, something like that.
Okay, I vaguely remember what you're talking about, Brad. But yeah, like it's a
Naruto
cultural
a
comedy
whole
beat
bunch.
that you wouldn't pick up on. It's just a frequency. Again, I keep coming back. It's a frequency you're not hearing on.
Ahoy.
Ahoy! That's something else.
Well,
Is ahoy a word?
Let's stop.
Man, I'm blanking on all this.
No.
Never mind.
let's
Moving on.
Well, I think we might be ready to transition. I have the perfect transition question for you.
Okay.
Oh, it's time for
It's time for would you rather read a bad translation or not read it at all?
I have the perfect example of this.
hey, all our listeners, before you listen to this segment, go on Twitter and comment on the episode, the tweet for this episode, and let me know, do you think that I, Isekai Sensei-sama, would rather read a bad translation or no translation at all? And then come back and we'll give you the answer shortly.
I think we all know. I think I know the answer in my heart.
Play a
what
little
you're gonna
Jeopardy
say.
music here. Take 3 guesses. The first 2 don't count.
Hopefully no
There's
one
only
needs
2
more
answers,
than one.
yes or no. Softball.
What did we say my number was? 650?
Every time I say a number, I think it's ridiculously high, and you go higher.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does keep getting bigger.
So, yes, I read so many fan translations that are just they're so bad.
Google Lens is the worst thing to happen to manga.
I don't understand because
Well, at least
for
you
the most
should
part,
start there, Google Lens, and then at least go, okay, I guess this is what they were going for. Like, at least massage it a little
right,
bit.
exactly. That's the thing. If I start reading a series by one Scanlator group and they're doing fine, and then they'll drop it or whatever, and someone else will pick it up and then be like, I'm just trying this out, and I've never translated before, and this is just a machine translation. And then I'll read it, and I'll be like, none of this makes any sense. Why would you upload this? There's literally no point to this. There's no single sentence in this 16 pages
I thought I was going to have to work a lot harder.
that is
here.
a
This
coherent sentence.
You open the floodgates, Ben.
No, this is everything I was going to. I thought I'd have to be arguing
Oh yeah,
this
no,
point.
no. He's been. This is why we were having this. This is why this topic was happening. It was the collective gears grinding.
It's literally like there's no point to read it, and I'll read it. I'll read the whole thing because I'll be like, there's
no
got to
point,
be.
but I will
I
read
have
it.
no standards. I'll shovel it into my brain, guaranteed.
There's gotta be something in here that I can understand. Because
Why? Wait.
No, but listen, like I
Don't.
said, I started the series with a different group. So this is something that I've become invested
so
in.
you're in the middle.
Right.
So you're still okay. No, I can respect that.
And so
'Cause
basically
yeah.
I'm reading it out of spite.
That's stupid. Who are you spiting? Yourself?
Maybe.
I know normally I give you garbage for having garbage taste, but in this case it seems like you're actively doing harm to yourself to spite yourself.
It's I have to read it
I have a
because I
problem.
got invested in it.
Brad, say I have a problem.
And I go through it and I try
Brad,
to
say I have a
figure
problem.
out what the problem what
The problem is you're a completionist.
The problem is you have a brain problem. Say I have a
try to
problem.
figure out what the story is. So if it gets translated properly in another chapter, because a lot of times people will pick up a series, they won't go back and translate the bad chapters. They'll just start from where there's one missing.
Oh, boy.
And so I need to suss out something from it.
Brad, say I have a problem.
No, I'm invested in the series. I gotta read it.
I've been there and I waited.
I've been there and I translated it myself.
I've been there. Like that's
that's what I'm going to start doing. I'm just going to send it over to Ben. I'm going to be like, Ben,
you're gonna
translate
learn
this
how
for
to
me.
do it, you lazy. Or you're gonna put it through Google Glass and then massage it into something that resembles something.
We had that. We found that one the other day, and I did the test one, and I fixed it.
So
yeah, you can go out there and solve the problem instead of being a part of just the like. This is terrible, but I'll put up with it.
So this whole episode came from the bonus episode we did where I had to read a bunch of isekai. And some of these are translated so poorly. I encountered a level I had never encountered before. I understand somebody really wanting to read something and translating it for themselves and then uploading that in case anybody else wanted to, and just with the knowledge that I'm not a translator, I don't speak great Japanese. But not only was it apparent that these people did not know any Japanese, they also had a tenuous grasp at best on English.
Oh, certainly. I know there are people who do scanlations that will do, like, they speak English poorly. They basically don't speak Japanese at all. And what they do is they machine translate it into, like, maybe they speak Portuguese or something.
Yeah.
And then use that and translate it into English.
No, that's what I saw somebody going Japanese to Mandarin to English, and they did not know enough English to be doing that, and they knew no Japanese.
But there's definitely a part of me that's like, why are you doing this? Because like, you don't get anything out of it. At best, someone might email you and like try and sue you. But like,
I mean, it could be bringing something to the world. I
think they get attention. I think they get a big kick out of seeing their download numbers go up. That's the dopamine.
I suppose.
I mean, we have that with our podcast, don't we?
A little bit. I like to see the numbers.
So, like, my master example of this
going up. I like that.
is the infamous Duong translation of JoJo Part 4, which was, I believe, either I don't remember if they were Vietnamese or Chinese college students who only spoke a little Japanese and only spoke a little English, translating all of JoJo Part 4 from Japanese into English. And people, I think it was popular when I was getting into JoJo. I think right around, like, I didn't read an official one. I read a fan sub, but it was not the Duong translation, which is named for, there's a point where the main villain Kira he's talking about, he's like, he's on a hill eating a sandwich, and at one point he goes, "What a beautiful duong," and it's like, what the heck is a duong? I think it's supposed to be like, what's a beautiful duong, but like that one has a lot of like now famous like memes of just translations that were like comically bad.
Yeah.
In a way that like people screenshotted it, like, but like there was also just like people wanted more JoJo so bad that they just like, this is all I have available, so this is what I was going to read, and like the scans were bad and the translation was bad, and it wasn't as infamous, but like that was a big thing of like Part 5 years ago wasn't big in America because we didn't have a good translation of it. But the one we had, like this, like literally the scans were poor and the translation was hard to follow, and it doesn't help that the stand powers in Part 5 get even weirder and harder to follow. Like that was like, there was a reason that there was a meme well before we had the Part, probably even 3 anime, where there was a picture of the main villain Stan King Crimson where it just said, "It just works," because it was so complicated to try to describe to people that people just said, "It works, it does whatever it does." But like that was a whole thing because it was so complicated because the translation was bad to understand what it was doing.
I'm pretty sure Araki just put that in there because he got sick of people asking.
No. It makes sense, but just it was a kind of power that was hard to already expressed visually in a still format of manga, and then a bad translation on top of that can even further muddy what has happened. And I remember reading that and just going, come on, and like you just have to keep going, because it's like, I guess from your thing, it's like I wanted to get to the end, but
no, that's exactly it.
But I had
Those
a continuity
exist.
of you know what? I did the same thing as you. There was a continuity that I had read other JoJo's and I wanted to know.
It's just mine is more trash than yours.
Okay.
Yes, because other people had read it and were talking about it and making memes, and I want to know, but who is talking about and making memes of these things that you're
There's
reading?
like 4 people.
There's dozens of us. Yeah. No, but like, I understand. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say a thing that kind of contradicts it.
So like normal.
I understand that anime and manga largely exist like in the way they do in this country, the effort to like stop erasing the Japanese culture from anime and manga. All of this comes from the valiant effort of fan translation, people exchanging VHS tapes at cons. I really never thought I would be on team shut it down until I read some of these
that were
translations
so trash.
that were just so like, if you're doing it for your own education and you don't speak great English or great Japanese or both, and you just want to give it a go, that's cool.
Yep. The Duong translation was a school project.
And I guess if you put that out there, then people will be like, hey, here's what you got
It was
wrong.
better than nothing. People liked to
so
freaking Kira saying, I looked at the Mona Lisa and it gave me a boner. That's a quote.
Nice.
That's a direct quote.
But I don't know. When you're putting these out, like, if you're calling yourself a translator, it almost feels like stolen glory. And it definitely
Stolen valor.
It definitely feels disrespectful to the artist.
Yeah, I can see that.
When you're just totally butchering what
Which
they're
is
saying.
why
Translation
I like,
is also, I would say, an art and not a science.
Yeah,
I
If
like
you approach it like a science, I don't agree with you.
I do like a lot of the scanlators who just do machine translation. They always have the disclaimer at the beginning. They're like,
machine translation.
this is machine translated. I hope it's good enough.
When that's like, I ran it through the machine translator for you. If you were
Basically,
going
yeah.
to try to machine translate
Although
it yourself,
a lot of the ones that do that, they then put in the effort to do some editing. They're not just like strictly.
There was that one
It's
you
the
said
ones
that was formatted poorly, that even just the act of reading it as English on a page was a painful
Yeah.
and confusing
I
situation.
had no
It
idea
just
what it
like,
was. It's the magical horse.
Magical
manga.
Horse was pretty good.
Magical horse.
What did we decide that actually?
She was trying to say Maji Umai, which means very good.
Right.
And they translated it as
Magical horse.
Uma means horse. Uma is also like Umai, a shortening of it, means good. So they translated that as Maji is magical, Uma is horse. That's what she's saying.
Oh, right.
Magical horse.
And actually, so this goes back to what we were talking about in the first segment, where translating the person saying something wrong is important, because she was speaking with a full mouth.
Yes.
And so the original Japanese
Maji Umai.
was wrong because she was saying it with a full mouth, but they translated it exactly as it was read.
I'm telling you, man, if like,
But that wasn't even machine translated, because we ran it through the machine translation and the
it was
machine
better.
got it
Yeah.
right.
It's like literally, if you just looked at the page and guessed what they were saying, you would have probably gotten it right.
closer
Yeah.
than whatever that was.
She's making like this. She just took a bite of something and she's making this orgasmic face,
Right.
and there's a word bubble. She thinks it's tasty. That's what's going on here.
And instead, they
Magical
just
horse.
left.
Magical horse.
Magical
When
horse
I take a
in
bite
there.
of something really delicious, I just declare to the heavens, magical horse.
Did they just think that was a Japanese expression for food that
Maybe.
tastes
No.
good? Like,
Oh my God.
that's a real magical horse.
But
that
you know
one.
what's so
This is
upsetting about
this
that?
is a 1 in a million. This is a unicorn of
That-
a meal.
But that's the thing that's so upsetting about that, is that series was one that I've been reading and I really enjoy, and then whoever was translating it dropped off, and so somebody was just like, I'm gonna put out my own translation.
Well, and I really do think the thing is, like with Kaizoku subs and all the other good fan subbers out there, you can probably get a job at Crunchyroll.
Yeah,
like if
that's
you really
true.
want to get paid to do
nothing.
it, you get paid nothing, but you get paid something.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what I just said, but
Yeah.
it's
Or video game translation.
the demand is so high that I think anybody who's halfway good at this,
There's a market.
probably moved
Whether you
into-
can make money in it is a question, but there is a market for this.
yeah.
What was that video game that there was never a translation, and it was only on like an SNES cartridge, and then like 20 years later somebody got the ROM and translated it?
That's a lot of video games.
I
I thought
play-
originally you were talking about Mother 3.
Well, that
Technically,
that
Mother 1 never came out in America until
one
a
I'm
couple
thinking
years
about is
not more
really
than a couple years
obscure.
ago now, but
I-
there's a bunch of games like that.
I've been
never made it
playing
to
the fan
West.
translation of the Sailor Moon game, if that's what you're talking about, from SNES. There's a Sailor Moon RPG, and it's delightful.
But I do want to say one thing that I really appreciate with the scanlators, the unofficial translators that do this, and Ben, this is a point of contention that we've had,
Yes.
is the translator notes.
Oh my God! Yeah, let's talk about that.
So-
I actually have a whole note. I closed my book.
This one's yours. This one, I don't know this one as well.
All right, what do you
I'm
have?
not reading
What do you have written
fan
down?
See what I
translations
wrote.
of manga at this moment in time.
Let's see what I wrote. What makes a bad translation? This is my notes.
Ooh.
4. Notes are not used or are used for your personal commentary.
Okay, yes. So here's the thing. So there's a bunch of series that I read, and you'll get the translator notes, and this is mostly manga, where the translator will put something helpful. And I like those. It'll be Kaikaku means plan.
Kaikaku means plan.
Except not quite, because
Yeah,
that one's
I know,
dumb.
that one's a joke
But the
one, but,
Nakama
like,
one
yeah,
is
the
is
Nakama
nice.
It's like I
one.
didn't know what to do here. This is the choice I made. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However,
Or the translation to notes at the back of Parasite, where it's like,
And-
this is what I was trying to go for.
this is something that happens in the manhwa all the time with the unofficial translations, is there will be translator notes, there will be editor notes, there will be typesetter. Everybody in the crew.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know
Comments
everybody
on the
I
shit.
didn't know this was a riff track. This is a
It's-
Mystery Science
and
Theater
they're
3000
commenting-
of a manga.
They're commenting on the story. They're like, I can't believe she did that. And it's just like,
They're
oh my
commenting on like
God.
the character's ass sometimes in the notes. Like it's
Do you want a YouTube comment section in a manga
Yeah.
in the margins? No! That
Here's
was one
the
of the
thing.
worst parts
So-
of reading through Tricks Dedicated to Witches is at the bottom, there was a Facebook comment section, and it was mostly just a bunch of horny idiots.
it's like, look, my wife doesn't want to listen to
where
my
did you read
commentary
that?
on Dune.
Did you read that on some weird site?
I don't know!
You must have.
No, like
bunch of horny Facebook comments.
nobody wants to listen to my shitty commentary on Dune. That's why I have a podcast. I don't just go out and like scribble in the margins of Dune books at Barnes and Noble.
Well, maybe you should have
Oh,
started
what?
that
Maybe
way.
you should try and make it like an ARG.
Okay, so I will say, every once in a while, and I'm mostly in agreement with Ben on this, even though I lean more towards I like them than Ben does, but every once in a while, something will happen in a manhwa, and there'll be some translator notes, and maybe it's 3 or 4 different people, and the comments are perfect. It's hilarious, and it's what you were thinking, and it just works. Now, that's like 5% of the time, and so in general, I wouldn't miss it if they didn't do it. But I will say, every once in a while, their choice.
Well, and that's the thing. Okay. You can break the fourth wall occasionally. Like people on YouTube have started doing that. People who have editors, they'll occasionally like edit in just a brief thing of the editor reacting to what was said. But for the most part, they need to understand that I'm not there for them or their jokes. I'm there to watch this thing.
The thing that I'm here for, that's the name that is on the placard of the thing that I've entered into.
And if
Maybe it's because I really like behind the scenes stuff.
if you want to hang out with your friends and talk about anime, podcast.
Have a pod. We're
YouTube
doing
channel.
it right now.
Yeah.
But see, maybe that's exactly it. We only get to do this once a month. So.
Well, yeah. And,
Well, yeah, but I see you every week, and
Well.
we do it in person. We just don't record it.
and
but
nobody
then we're
listens
not allowed to talk
us.
about stuff because we got to save it for the
Talk
podcast.
about other stuff.
But yeah, but nobody listens to us. But a fun way to listen to us would be if we
there's
just interrupted a JoJo
dozens
thing.
There's
of them.
probably like 4 people in Germany that are listening to us.
They're real, Ben.
You know the other foreign thing I watched for the 4 people in Germany? I finally watched the Nosferatu silent film and its remake in German.
How is it in German if it's silent?
The remake is in German. The
The remake's not silent.
No.
The German is
So is it
silent.
really a remake of a silent film, or
it's
is it
a-
just a fully new film?
It's a Werner Herzog. It's almost like a shot for
Werner
shot remake.
Herzog.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But they just added dialogue.
They just added
Yep.
German.
Yeah.
And
And
it's through the German
color
switch
and-
on it.
Yeah. But yeah.
A Wiedersehen.
I understood. My favorite one was like Blutus Lieb. I got that.
What does that mean?
Blood is life.
Oh, that's fine.
I just thought it was funny that Blut is blood.
So exciting news, guys. We actually got a sponsor. So we're going to do a quick ad spot and then we'll come back and talk some more.
ご覧のスポンサーでお願いします。
You know when you feel the weight of horniness. You may feel exhausted, hopeless, and frustrated. Whatever you do, you feel lonely, and you're beginning to wonder if the romantic subplot in your manga is just one big tease. These are some symptoms of will they won't they syndrome, a serious medical condition affecting over 20 million manga readers. Though the cause is unknown, it is thought that it might have something to do with editors pushing for a popular series to continue its run long past the point that the author has planned. Prescription hentai doujinshi works to correct this problem. You just shouldn't have to feel this way anymore. With hentai doujinshi, you can experience your favorite characters hooking up in a variety of sexual positions. It is important to note that hentai doujinshi isn't for everyone. Side effects may include dry mouth, insomnia, rejection of 3D relationships, and intense nasal bleeding. Ask your senpai if hentai doujinshi may be right for you.
So that was our ad. Hope everybody, I don't know, talks to their senpai.
I mean, always just talk.
We gotta get that conversion rate up. So,
Yep. Senpais talk to your kohais.
Andrew, last time we inexplicably got a letter from Truck-san.
Yes, Truck-san appeared oddly underneath my door in the apartment that I live in.
So I have to ask, did we? Oh, I think we did. There's a letter.
I'm just holding it next to the microphone. It did appear on my door. It was really creepy, but
we just got a letter.
We just got a letter. I know who it's from.
Oh, okay.
And he confessed to many murders.
That is true.
I mean, technically, yes. So, an interesting one on this one compared to the last one. It's typed out again, like last time. There's parts of it that have been redacted.
Oh. Okay, so apparently,
I don't know if he did that or his organization has come in for this.
I would venture to guess that the organization definitely knows what we're doing.
At the very least, okay. I mean, I'm hoping that means as long as we got it, that he can keep doing this.
That would be true.
He's not getting fired.
Oh, I think I can see the marks there. There's only like 3 of them on there.
There's not too much. I'm hoping.
I guess he's not revealing too much dangerous information then.
You'll understand why those parts are redacted when we get there. I've already read through it and kind of know why, and you'll kind of understand when we get there. So I'll read out at that moment when it's redacted.
Here we go.
Okay. Gotta get the voice back.
Oh my god.
It's like he's here with me.
Truck Sensei is speaking in your ear.
You don't want him here with you. That means
I
you're
don't
about
want
to
his
die.
truck here with me.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not in his truck. He's just out and about. I'm sure he's fine. Dear, that time I got reincarnated in the same world as an anime podcaster host, Brad, Ben, and Kermit. I cannot begin to describe how much delight and loud whooping occurred in the cab of my truck when I heard you read my letter on last month's episode. I was so in a state of euphoria, I almost hit a powerful businesswoman instead of the set-for-death pale loser I was intending to mow down. Whoa! I wonder what kind of story that would have been. A person going to another world already equipped with useful life experience, and then the added benefits of an isekai reincarnation? No need to think about it. We here on the Truck Force stick to the script, but I digress. Your voice and music choice for my letter was spot on. It reminded me of growing up in Redacted, before I found myself in Japan in my current macabre employment. It's been a trip acclimating to the culture here. I've had my fair share of sans, samas, kuns, chans, senpais, kohais, and the rare dona when my boss really hits the sauce at a company party and decides he's a samurai captain. I've also been known to drop a nani, konnichiwa, arigato, ganbatte, and sometimes an omae wa shinderu if I'm really feeling myself after a job well done.
Oh my god.
But never a gomenasai. I'm a proud redacted, and I do not say sorry for being me. Luckily, one of the perks of being an isekai driver is that we gain the ability to understand and speak all languages as needed. So that's pretty cool. I mean, don't you think it's weird that every fantasy world these Japanese people get sent to uses the same language structure and ideas present in their home world? Well, my paper's going off, directing me to another hit, so I'll have to leave that particular question to your learned podcasting heads. Until my next letter, your favorite driver, Truck-san.
I got a question.
I mean, he's not here, but I guess we can ask him through this.
Yeah, why does he refer to Ben and I with our names, but he calls you Kermit?
I don't know.
He's either insulting me or coming on to me.
I think, because he's not using the proper honorary affix. I think it's that, I mean, maybe this is me because I'm reading them out loud, but I just think Brad, Bet, and Kermit, with his accent, rolls off the tongue really nicely.
Ah, I see.
I think it just flows well.
I think we can safely assume what was redacted was him admitting that he was actually from South London and he's a proud Briton.
That's the scariest thing of all. Especially considering that he's killing people in Japan.
But that's a part of his organization, and they're going to a better place.
I suppose.
They're going to a new world where there's lots of room to run.
I mean, he almost hit that one Japanese businesswoman. Like, I mean, what would have that story been? How many women die in isekais, Brad?
Not
Isekai
as many.
Sensei-sama?
Not as many.
Never.
They're there to be saved.
Well, no, most of the time.
They're there to be your harem.
No, most of the time, if it's a woman, there's one of two options there. Either she will go and go into a place and be the saint there. Actually, I guess there's three. If she's by herself, she's normally the saint. Or if she's by herself, she'll become the villain in a manhwa that's an Otomo game, something like that. However, there's the third one, which is the whole class gets summoned. And in that case,
that's
most
just
of the
one
time,
of many. That's not
in those cases, the girls are, heroes alongside the boys. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, the girls are going to have hero roles, or like 2 or 3 of the girls are not healer roles.
Yeah.
2 or 3 of the girls are healers.
We
and
can't
then
be creative.
One who's an archer and another one's a mage. And there's hardly ever a warrior. But if there is a warrior, she's like bigger than everybody else, and it's a joke for some reason. So...
Because can you imagine like a woman being a warrior?
I know.
Could you imagine a woman? Wasn't that last episode we talked about of like Japan thinks tall women are weird? What were we talking about?
I think mangakas think tall women are intimidating.
There is one manhwa that I read, the Red Knight. Oh, what is it? Anyway, it's one of the ones on your list, so we'll get to it.
Oh, good.
And
your crime sentence.
There's a bunch of women who are knights, and they're like good knights, and nobody like says it's weird or anything. It's very progressive.
We should read like the classics of shoujo, like your Sailor Moons, your Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant.
Is this like? Is that what heroin addiction is going to be? Is that Brad thinks it's just to get you, Ben, to read a bunch of manhwa, but it's actually also secretly you, Ben, to get Brad to read some of this original shoujo?
We could probably do that eventually.
It's a cultural exchange.
No, I've literally given him a list of the ones that I think he will like.
I did previously read the worst. And they weren't all bad.
Some of them the worst, but
some
also
of them were actually decent.
Them, so. Okay,
yeah.
But I thought it was Truxan brought up an interesting idea that it's like it is interesting that all these Japanese people with all this like specific like verbal decorum everywhere they go also has that. Like they don't have this moment of like nobody's using honorifics. People are just using everybody else's names. They must be so like that's not present anywhere.
So there's a lot of series that just gloss over that and don't even talk about it. Then there's some that'll be like, oh, when you get isekai'd into this world, we're giving you the ability to understand these languages.
I always just was impressed with how clean the Japanese isekai writers think medieval Europe was.
Well, that's definitely a point. But there's also ones that actually make it a central plot point that the character does not understand anybody in this world, and they have to like deal with that.
Like, I'm not saying they always have to do that. I feel like anytime you poke fun at these, it's like, yes, I know mechanically why it needs to work because they just need to be able to go, okay, you speak the same language I do, cool. Like, that's not the story we're trying to tell here. But it is like, it's interesting in those little moments to like, has anybody approached that? And it sounds like the answer is yes.
I mean, there's so many. You can basically find at least one that has done a thing that you're thinking of.
Except the Japanese businesswoman thing. It sounds like that hasn't happened. Well, I guess not in the form that I was thinking about it, which...
Not as in like going and being a warrior adventure in another.
Yeah,
world,
not just like literally the standard isekai. Except, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, I'm still waiting for my female lead shonen battler that isn't like 100% just.
What if she just goes and uses her businesswoman skills to like corner the market on?
That's what I want. I think that would be interesting.
So there's some Otomo isekai that do that.
Oh, there you go.
But not in Otomo, just like in the standard, the stereotyped isekai.
Most of the Otomo ones, they go in there and they're like, I'm the villainess, so I got to change the story so I don't get beheaded.
See, I don't want that. I want it
and
like
then
she
they do
comes
their
in
own
and she
thing.
makes a kingdom, but it's like she uses all of her powers of running like a corporation to then run the kingdom like that, and everything's running like clockwork. And
Yeah,
it's
I
like
don't know of one
sales are up or something.
for a woman, but there is one where a demon lord summons a businessman from Japan to be one of his.
Oh yeah,
heavenly
you've told us
kings.
about that one. That one sounds interesting.
Yeah, that one. I enjoy that one.
I mean, you'll hear from me, and I think we've also heard from Truxan of just ideas about the isekai structure in ways that it's very formulaic, and what seems, at least to the both of us, is very simple ways of shaking up this formula that just won't ever happen. But hey, who knows? I mean, again, I guess I know who knows. You would know, because you know all of them.
Well, it'll happen if it hasn't yet. It's I'd liken it to Rule 34.
I would also, but not in the way you're discussing.
I disagree
And
with
also,
you, because that's
Rule
very,
34.
Rule 34 stays very true, but a lot of my ideas about isekai do not exist, at least in the format that I'm picturing them.
Well, as soon as you talk about it, it'll exist.
Keep
at
me
some
posted
point.
then.
You just have to wait for somebody to
I don't even know if I
translate
want to
it.
read it. It's just more of a curiosity, but yeah. But no, thank you, Truxan, for another letter.
Yes, please don't send us sensitive information. We don't want to have to deal with the organization. So,
Well, I think, like we said, I think the organization was the one that redacted those bits out. I think we're okay. Obviously, it came to us, which means they're cool with it.
yeah.
I think he just writes what's off the top of his dome. I don't think he keeps...
I
Look,
don't
the
really...
last-
I think he's just happy to have somebody to like talk to that like knows but
but
isn't like one of his coworkers.
I don't really want them to be watching. They were probably already watching.
They're already
it.
watching.
I'm
I
called
was gonna say,
they're
Isekai
coming for you at some
Sensei-sama,
point
but-
when you were
The
about
last
on
time
your
we
deathbed.
offended them, we just got reincarnated in the same world as Anime Podcast.
Exactly.
So
So, for our recommendation this month, we're going to do a little bit different one. Most of the time, we've been recommending manga, but this time, we're going to recommend something that we've actually been watching. So, I want to talk about that with everybody and, recommend that to the people listening. So, what we're going to recommend this month is Ranking of Kings.
No. We're not recommending Ranking of Kings.
What do you mean? Why not?
We are. You guys have been grinding your gears this whole episode. I want to. This is what grinds my gears. Is we have been watching Ranking of Kings for the past couple of weeks, and this is an airing of grievances moments. This is we're a roast mode of just letting off all of our thoughts on this.
But it's
this
got
is a
all
roast
those.
emendation.
It's got all those cool mystery things going on, and
you know, in Game of Thrones when they killed Ned Stark and that was like a weird moment. What if they did that with Boji?
Okay, wait. Okay, so wait. Before we get into this, just to drop kayfabe just a little bit and look behind the curtain a little bit. This isn't a normal recommendation. We haven't finished watching this anime, but it has just been so insane and all over the place, and people keep recommending it, and it's the most I think an anime has ever made me swap between, oh my gosh, this is incredible, and oh my gosh, I want to die.
well, that's
Maybe not I wanna
that's
die.
probably
I
a
want
little
Boji to
harsh.
die.
It has high highs and low lows.
It's the most internal whiplash I've had, I think, watching an anime ever. And I feel like this is somewhat of a having a place to talk about it together, even though we kind of talk about it every week, as we watch it, but also to like put a point in space, because we're about halfway through season 1. So we can come back to this when we finish it and have an idea of how we were feeling about things.
So, quick summary.
Yes.
Ranking of Kings follows, I guess probably there just follows two people, but the main character is called Boji, and Boji is the prince of a kingdom in a world where there's way too many kings.
And they have to rank them. There's
They
at least, I
literally-
think, around 100.
I think there's wasn't it like 700 or something
Oh
ridiculous
gosh,
like
I
that?
don't remember. I just remember thinking it was 10, and then at one point somebody goes, "Oh, you're like 89 or something." I'm like, "Oh, that
maybe
sounds like
that-
there's
okay.
almost 100."
I just kind of rolled my eyes at another strict Japanese hierarchy with a lot of rules for how to move
Yep.
up and decorum. And
I'm a sucker for that. I
So-
like that you hate that stuff, and I'm such a sucker for it.
So Boji's dad happens to be a giant. Boji is not a giant.
He's very small, even compared to the other people.
And Boji's dad's the king, obviously. Boji's a prince. His dad's the king. And Boji's dad is ranked number 8. And we find out a little later that the only reason he isn't ranked number 1, because he is ranked number 1 in power,
He's literally the strongest thing.
but he is lacking in other areas, and that's why he's ranked lower. So, Boji's there, and Boji's mom died a while back, right? And the king remarried. He got a
Boji
new
also
queen.
looks like a toddler. Not a toddler. He looks like a preschooler.
Well, we'll get into that.
Okay.
So
Boji beat down.
So Boji's mom died when he was very young, probably like 2, 3 maybe.
Who knows?
And his dad remarries. There's a new queen. She's not a giant. His mom was a giant. The new queen's not a giant. The new queen has a baby. How that works, they didn't explain it. I'm not going to ask.
Don't you think too hard about it. I'm sure they'll do some world building on
So-
it later because this show's crazy.
Boji now has a little brother,
A stepbrother.
Daida. Now,
A half brother.
very shortly
Yes,
into this series, I think it was episode 2 or something like that, the king dies. And his final proclamation is that Boji is to be king. And then almost immediately at the coronation ceremony, Daida is crowned king, and nobody knows why. Now, you would think at this point, oh, Boji should speak up and do something about it. But I've left out a crucial detail until just this moment, which is Boji is deaf.
And mute. Well, not mute, but
He is functionally mute because he's unable to speak other than making some sounds, which we'll get into. So
he's also able to read sign language but not do it.
He does it every now and then,
Yeah.
but they
I
don't.
guess they don't have a lot of people.
They don't animate it on his tiny hands.
Yeah. Side note of that, I am such a sucker. Anytime they animate some rotoscope, animate some people doing sign language, I genuinely do love that. It's the best.
And
So-
it's probably worth a note that the animation looks exactly like a Don Bluth cartoon.
That's what that's.
Hmm.
it's rotoscope.
So the series basically is following Boji as he goes out into the world and is trying to get stronger and more stuff, which we haven't gotten to yet. And there's all kinds of machinations going on behind the scenes with Daida and some shady craps going on, and we're still getting into that.
And just even Brad's description does not capture the madness that we have run into already, even though all those things have happened. Just I will give it credit because I got a lot of recommendations on this on they're like, oh, this is like One Piece level world building, but in a lot smaller, shorter package. And I don't know if that's true yet, but some of the ideas that it's slowly floating us are kind of crazy.
It also sort of apes the One Piece style to an extent, where it's very, very cartoony. It's not a classic anime manga style.
It looks like the bit I make every week is it looks like a European comic just fell through a portal and
Yeah.
everybody's speaking Japanese in it. I think of
It's
like a Tintin or an Asterix and Obelix or
Yeah,
some other
every-
French cartoon.
Yeah.
all the characters are very rounded and smooth.
Very picturesque. They look
Yeah.
like a children's
And
book,
the-
but not in the way that the Spy Family intro
Well,
does, where
all
it
of-
looks like
right.
it's very pastoral.
And all the
Very-
backgrounds and stuff, it's all painted scenery and
One
stuff
of its
like
biggest strengths, I would say.
When the characters are very heavily distorted, like the body
Yeah.
shapes are all.
that. Which is that One Piece thing.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I'm
The-
a big
the
sucker
one-
for how this show looks and moves.
The one thing that it doesn't do that One Piece does is sort of like the lanky characters. Every character has some kind of thick, rounded thing going on.
Yeah. But
All right, tell us why it's terrible.
Boji.
Boji. Yeah, you know what? It's Boji. We started off on a bad fit. So I was I had brought this, I think we had finished, I don't remember we were watching, and it's I've been hearing enough people I trust in anime talking of raving about this show, Ranking of Kings. We need to check it out. Because when I hear a bunch of people saying it's amazing and I hear the phrase world building on the level of One Piece, I go, oh shoot, I need to check that out. And we watched the first episode and are just kind of pissed at it because it seems like it goes out of its way. We got really salty about them. It feels like it's be sad for Boji in the most just ham-fisted, stereotyped, cliched way. And it's when you tell me and you point at a character and go, be sad for them. Here are all the levers that I pull to make you sad for them and see how a terrible experience they're having right now is a good way to really quickly piss me off at that character and make me hate them.
My first impression was this is anime Oscar bait.
Yeah.
The style is very Don Bluth. The story is very emotionally manipulative and melodramatic. For the first episode, that was my first impression.
We started off on kind of a bad foot. It also helps that Boji makes... You know what, Brad? Can you cut the sound in? I don't even want to try to recreate it.
No, it'll be offensive if I try to do the voice.
Exact. Also
Yeah.
agreed. Where it's like, I get it.
And that's part of the problem. So
Like, I get it.
I have to point out, in the first episode, we are bludgeoned with Boji's issues. That, like you said, they're very much like feel feelings. You have to feel feelings.
This small boy, and it's like it's easy to make small things
Yeah.
cute in anime.
He's not a
Anime's great
person.
at
He's
that.
a puppy.
Well, and the thing
Yeah.
it was like half of the first episode.
Yeah.
And then the other half was like, okay, something intriguing is going on here. And they start to sort of show you like, hey, there's more to Boji than you might think. And so
Well, there's more to the world. Every
Well,
time
the world
I feel like
definitely,
we enjoy
but-
it the most when we're not following
the
Boji.
end of the first episode is he's having a sparring match with Daida.
Oh yeah.
And they get you to that point where you're like, hey, Boji can actually do something. You gotta watch. And
My special boy, he's out there.
that
Watch him
was
do
the
his thing.
that was the thing that caught me. I was like, okay, I'll stick around for this. Now, granted, my bar is so much lower than you guys,
Correct.
but in the second episode, at the very beginning, they do another sad backstory of like the side character who's like a weird black blob assassin creature thing.
Still not really sure what's up with that guy.
And they did, oh my God, it was the whole half of the first episode. And it was just like,
Be
look how
sad.
bad his life was. Oh, these horrible things are happening. You need to feel sorry for him and be sad. And you know what? I don't mind emotional things. In fact, I quite enjoy them a lot of the times.
Agreed.
But when there's no build up to it, when you don't understand the character
and
beforehand,
when it feels like it's all the normal levers that get pulled.
Right,
For
it's
have
literally
have
just-
sympathy for character.
it's
before
emotional-
You meet them, really.
it's emotional
manipulation.
It's
manipulation.
emotional manipulation.
And
That's what we
it
kept
just-
coming back to.
We got to the end of the first half of that second episode, and I was like, I don't know if I want to keep watching this.
I don't remember what we saw that was like, because it was always there was just enough that I went, I need to know.
The thing that happened was at the end of the first half, that was it. The second half of the episode was normal stuff again.
Also, I think it's look also.
And I
kept me
believe-
around, and then collectively us then.
I believe the king died at the end of the second episode, which is the point where a weird demon thing comes out of him and points at Boji and then disappears
Into like smoke, like he's the strange, and it's the strangest thing that is so out of like visual and character,
So-
everything that's going, and I remember just like, what was that?
We're all like,
What was that?
we're like, oh, this was emotional manipulation, and this was awful, and why are they doing this? And then what the hell is that?
And that is my experience of Boji, is getting really pissed off at Boji and then going, oh my gosh, this wild thing I've never seen. There's like a spot later that was like another big like, okay, I'm flagging guys. I need something.
And at the very end of this last episode that we watched, which I believe is about halfway through,
yeah, a little under.
there's like sort of a stinger kind of scene at the end that you're just like, oh my God, what is going on?
Like there's this spot where like Boji is out adventuring in the woods. I think they're trying to go somewhere with like two of his, I don't know if I'd call them retainers.
Oh, right. So they're going on a journey to find someone to help make Boji stronger.
Yeah.
On their way, they're camping out, and
the
Boji
woods.
gets lost in the woods
I think he like falls down a tunnel or something.
or a hill or something. Yeah.
and they find
Oh, right. He falls down a pit.
Yeah.
And because of Boji's sort of special ability, he doesn't get impaled by all these spikes. But at the bottom of the pit, he finds a tunnel, and so he follows this tunnel.
And he finds a strange large man. I think he's like dressed in furs. Maybe I might be making that part of it. But the main thing is he has a crown on his head. So this is the first time we've seen somebody out in the world with a crown on, and we already have the concept in show of a ranking of kings. So I'm like, here is a king living underground in the woods. And then he finds Boji and he goes above ground and he does a dance that like helps along or summons the spirit or something of the like renewability of the forest. So it literally sucks up all the dead animals and shits out living ones. And I use that term specifically.
It's
It
the
literally
cycle.
looks like it is excreting them out back into the woods. And it's the animation is gorgeous. It's been a while since I watched it. It's incredible. It is like transcendental. I feel like I am on shrooms, a drug that I have never done. I feel like I am losing my mind, and I'm having a blast going, what's happening? Because I don't think I've ever loved and hated an anime as much as this. Because anytime Boji is the main thing that is on screen, I go, F this. I hate Boji. This sucks. I hate everything about him. Like, we're just heckling him the entire time. And anytime it's like another character that shows up or some other thing going on, like whatever Died is up to and that crazy like Game of Thrones stuff, it's just the wackiest, like wacky isn't the right word, but just the most like, what is like, I don't know what's happening.
It's really
this show has such a simple art style that so when wild things happen, you're like, it's not like it's like I didn't really quite parse visually what was going on. It's like I saw what was going on and I have no concept of what's happening, and it's kind of incredible. I love being confused by strange things that I can't parse, but that don't feel like they're too complicated to be parsed.
The animation,
it's like an act of befuddlement.
The animation, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, no, I would say 10.
I disagree.
There's nothing else that looks like it.
I'm not going to take it down that far though, so I'm not going to argue.
Yeah, like, well, in my mind, I totally understand why people are attracted to it.
Sure.
It's like that Don Bluth thing, and I have a lot of respect for Don Bluth, and I get the look and feel looks great. The story is at its best when it's doing the weird occult stuff that has become the whole Daida subplot. Whatever's going on with Boji, I just could not care less about.
And I really want to hear from people about this. Please, if you're listening to this, please, well, if you've watched Ranking of Kings, I want to know what
does
is drawing
Boji get
people
better?
to this.
Or did we just
even
start
care
out
about
on
that.
a bad foot on Boji?
I want to know.
I feel like he's our major sticking point.
Because so much of all of Boji's plot makes me feel like they're emotionally manipulating me. There's definitely things there. The idea that he's going to have a growth arc and everything, and like the mystery of like, why is he tiny when he's the son of giants, and what's going on there.
The mystery of I don't know what's going on in the show and where it's going, and I'm so glued to know where.
So there's something there, but I need to know what it is that attracts people to this, because there's so much.
This is.
I've heard that it's a really good representation of deaf people. And honestly, I know some deaf people, and none of them make weird noises like he does. Like,
Brad, play the sound again. I know you played it earlier in post-editing, but play it again just for clarity's sake.
And I don't understand. It makes me think that someone who doesn't know any deaf people is going, oh, this is a good representation of deaf people.
Because they've got the sign language. Like, people legit doing sign language.
Right, the sign language makes sense.
I think
the
that's
fact
great.
that the main character is deaf is probably good representation. But the way that
he's deaf, it's never brought up. I mean, it's never directly referenced. There's times when people say, like, you got to hang out with, you're the only guard that knows sign language, so you're going with Boji. But that's not the challenge.
He learned sign language specifically to go with Boji. He's a cool guy.
But the deafness is not the challenge he needs to overcome. And this is another area where I'm not saying people need to be defined by their disadvantages, but Boji is deaf. That's not a challenge he needs to overcome. The kingdom seems pretty cool with him being deaf.
Not to mention he can read everyone's lips.
Even when he's not looking at
even
them.
the little guy who doesn't have a mouth.
The shadow guy who has no mouth.
He
must scream.
What they're not cool with is that he's not physically strong.
Right.
Which is just dumb to me. This is a weird case.
That's coming from a kingdom where the king was literally the strongest being in reality, supposedly.
This is a weird case where I think Mr. Isekai Sensei-sama is actually the one in the middle here, because I am watching it to keep up with the conversation. I don't like it. I like I said, animation is a 10 out of 10. It's worth checking out just for the animation. But the occult stuff that's going on with Daida is what interests me the most. But it needs Boji to turn on. Like, Boji is going to be the heart and soul of the story. He has to be, because I think where they're going is Boji's kingdom is going to fall, and he's going to need to save not just his kingdom, but his family, because he has a weird relationship with his stepmom. He's probably like Daida even has more redeeming qualities as time goes on, and you start to feel bad for him. And so like, that's where they're going with this.
And that's what I'm sticking around for, because I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right now we're sitting in the darkness of Boji being weird and annoying, and it makes you go like, is there a way out of this? But I see it. I can see the end, and I go, I'm going to keep going that way. We're going to find out.
I've committed to a season. I will give it a season. If it gets where it's going by the end of the season, I might be able to stick out another season.
Which is why this is part 1.
Yes.
So stick around for part 2.
And in however many months.
Yeah.
I think I'm the driving force why we keep watching it the most. My dislike and anger are usually the most vocal. My joy is also the most vocal when we watch it. It brings me great joy when we watch an episode, because we've been doing Spy Family at the start, which is immaculate, and we all gush about, and I have a great time. And then we watch, what is it called, Brad? I'm so sorry.
Faraway Paladin.
Faraway Paladin.
Which we haven't talked about yet, and we will.
Is a little bit more low-key, so it's like a nice little middle section. And then we're getting ready. We usually end with Ranking of Kings, and I just start feeling myself. I come alive. I'm like yelling at Boji. I'm shouting at my screen. I'm hooting and hollering. I am having an absolute blast loving and hating this show. It brings me joy. It brings me life. Like, it's got its hooks in me. I need to know what happens next. I need to be mean to Boji every week, or I don't feel like I've gotten a proper experience. Like, I'm having a grand old time. I don't think there's anything I've ever watched that is akin to that.
I think last week we touched on the way that it sort of gives you whiplash, going from like annoying to good.
Well, it's like 1 minute
pissed off to wonder.
Right.
1 minute you're watching Boji, and it is all the fun of having a bad movie night, as everybody rolls their eyes and is angry and hoping Boji will shut up. And then there's these like weird peaks where it is like the best of Dawn Bluth and Adventure Time and like Labyrinth and
Yes. Just like weird fantasy stuff that I've never seen before, that I would not expect to see in this art style and setting. And you're like, well, what's that? Put the camera back on that. I need to see and somebody tell me about this. And they're like, no, we're going to go over here.
But
it feels like in a way that they very clearly know what it all is and what it means. And it's just like, I need to know what that is. And they keep giving me more of those. And I guess maybe if those don't land when they start answering them, I think that might just make me turn entirely. But for right now, they do the thing that I love in anime, is they're showing me weird concepts and things, and I love weird concepts and things that I've never witnessed before. And I will say Ranking of Kings is really good for that, of showing me strange things.
I want to be clear, and this might just be my opinion, so you guys will need to let me know, but I don't hate, or I'm not annoyed by everything surrounding Boji. I think the growth arc that we're starting to get to, like in the last episode, I think it's interesting there. The thing that really gets me with it, the thing that annoys me the most, is what I think is terrible portrayal of the way that he sounds.
It doesn't help.
Which is just really...
There's other things about him that piss me off now, and maybe that's because of that initial bad taste, but it does not help.
The other thing that I don't like is how he's played for those emotional beats in a way that feels manipulative, which we touched on a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to be clear that like a lot of his story I am drawn to. I am interested in.
He's at least age-wise almost a teenager, but he acts,
I
sounds, and
think
looks
he's
like a
13 or
preschooler.
14.
Yeah.
Because he's at least however many years older than Daida, and Daida looks like,
who I think is 10 or 11.
which I guess it's hard to read on him because he's been in the court. He's kind of a little bit older, seeming. But
I don't mean this comparison to be insensitive.
he seems younger than Daida, even though he is clearly he is mechanically not.
Right.
When I say this, know that it has nothing to do with Boji's physical disabilities and everything to do with his character.
Yeah.
You could replace Boji with a puppy and it's the same story.
Yes. Agreed.
He works real hard. He's got that good ethic. He's loyal.
A puppy with opposable thumbs.
Right,
yeah.
but he wants to impress, and he's constantly abused and rejected, but he finds his one friend, and that's the Shadow Guy, and him and the Shadow Guy go off on an adventure, and, Boji just keeps trying really hard, but he keeps getting setback after setback, but then he just tries real hard again, and it's just... Boji needs character development.
It's so straightforward in a way that the rest of the show just isn't, and that's why it's just like... It's maddening, and it's like, there has to be a reason to this. There's too much other things going on in the show that are so weird and different, and I would say clever, that it's, and like clearly setting up dominoes, that it seems, it's strange how straightforward and by the books Boji's stuff is.
I agree with that. Like, it's obvious that the writers can write, because there are peaks where it is like top tier fantasy. But they are, at the moment, a little bit few and far between.
Like, I love the little, like, bit where it's like you come into the one city and, like, there's a statue of a man, but the face is all messed up. And you're like, what's up with that? Did, like, somebody do that doesn't like him? And then you meet him, and then you meet his brother, and he's like, oh, yeah, my brother hates his face. He went to the market to deface the statue that somebody made of him because he hates his face that much. And it's like, that was a twist on what I was expecting to happen, and was a neat idea, especially because his brother's like, I'm so handsome, look at me.
So,
and that guy did have a weird face. So
what I need to make me like the show is I need Boji to reveal what it is he wants. And what he's trying to do and why he's trying to do it. And because Boji's motivated to be a king, but like, who wouldn't be motivated to be a king?
Especially when his dad was king, and he was told he was going to be king.
It's a desirable thing.
He doesn't show any. Hasn't shown anything that goes, this is a good idea to put you in charge of a lot of people that you can't communicate well with, or like you've consistently shown you're just not good at things.
The only thing we know about Boji is that, and this is good character development. So I'm balancing what I say, I guess. But we know that Boji is aware that people underestimate him and think very little of him. And we know that bothers him, but he puts on a brave front.
Also, he's really good at dodging.
And we also know...
Spoilers.
We also know that he
first
appreciates his shadow friend.
He's got empathy.
Yeah. So
voiced by ProZD
in the English dub, which I wish we could just get... Everything else was the Japanese, at least right now, but him would just be ProZD, because ProZD, that like little clip we listened to get what English Boji sounded like, ProZD's freaking... What's his actual name? I want to like respect him a little bit more.
Sunwon Cho.
Yeah, he's like, I wish we could just get the
sure
English voice for the Shadow Guy for while we were watching the Japanese original stuff. So yeah.
But yeah, I need a little bit more Boji character development, and I need it like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Like by the end of the season, he's got to be somewhere else.
There's definitely a lot of dragging, but as we've mentioned, we're committed at this point. We're like halfway in.
So this is our sticking the knife in the hitching post. We'll be back here in a couple of months.
I hope to be back here in a couple of months, just saying how completely wrong I was and how I was an idiot for ever having this opinion.
Yeah, I think that's why we're doing it more than anything else, where this could... I genuinely don't know what direction this is going to go for all 3 of us, and I think that's going to be...
It's so
why
wobbly.
we wanted to capture this to...
It gives me whiplash.
Freeze this moment, this feeling in Amber, to come back to it later and go, either we were crazy or we were on top of this, or wow, we got completely whatever. Like...
And again, like, don't spoil stuff for us, but... let us know, like, why did you like it a lot, or why did you hate it?
Or maybe, or say that we haven't reached a certain point that it's like, oh, it'll make sense here or something. Like,
but there are, I would say, there's probably at least one point in each episode where something weird and mysterious happens that we all go, we're all like, what was that?
Yeah,
what?
I live for that.
It is happening with increasing frequency,
and those are the things that are keeping us around.
Yes.
So
I'm hopeful. If I were watching it on my own, I would have probably shut it off, but I do think I could recommend it as a group watch.
Yes.
There's a lot to talk about.
Literally a delight every week. I'm sad we can't watch it this week because we're recording. But
Speaking of group watching, let us know if you'd like to get some live commentary on Ben watching Konosuba for the first time.
Yeah, I have no idea what Konosuba is. I keep hearing about it, and I'll be real, I thought it was some kind of like isekai porny harem thing.
I mean, yes, but no.
Okay.
Yes,
it's
but not how
pretty
you're
much that.
thinking. I've seen all of Konosuba.
There's more to it, but pretty much
this
that.
was why when he revealed he hadn't seen Konosuba and didn't know about it, and both you and I teamed up, which is a very rare team up in this case against Ben. It was like, oh, we need to do this. So yeah, maybe we'll do some Konosuba diaries on our YouTube page and or little bonus episodes here.
Well, that'll do it for our latest episode. We successfully got through the entire thing.
We survived all this gear grinding.
Yeah, this one's probably going to be our longest one
This
ever.
was a pop off,
which is
isn't that
interesting.
true of every last episode.
I find that really interesting because we went into this with, I went into this with no notes on our discussion topics. So.
I went into this with many notes.
So I hope everybody enjoyed that, and thanks for listening, especially people who are still listening. You're our most loyal listeners listening to the very end. We really appreciate you.
We love you.
You're the real heroes.
So make sure you subscribe, follow, comment, like, all that fun stuff, social media stuff. You can check out our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. We post the podcast episodes up there as well as blog posts. And Ben has been posting reviews up there, and he said he's going to do one a week, which he didn't this
Well,
week.
you've been doing the new stuff that premieres in Shonen Jump, which I find a very helpful service.
Every new manga in Shonen Jump.
But they're fairly frequent, so check that out. You can hit me up on Twitter at Isekai Sensei. You can also email me, Isekai Sensei-sama @gmail.com. We've got our YouTube channel. That time I got reincarnated as an anime podcaster, where we do simul release of the podcast up there in stereo. And hit us up on Good Pods, which is a good place to leave a comment on the episode. Not a lot of the other podcast apps, it's difficult to leave comments at places. So.
And I think it would be great if somebody could just take the transcript of this and machine translate it into Japanese.
And then machine translate that back into English and then give it to us.
Yeah.
I will post that as the official transcription of this episode if someone does that.
The auto subtitler takes in the audio and then translate that into Japanese and then translate that back into English. That'd be a mess.
Ben, you got some plugs?
Oh, yes. If you haven't heard enough of me complaining about problems I have with literature and writing, you can listen to me on the other podcast I do called Words About Books. Check me out on Twitter at Bento Baggins. And just keep looking for those blog posts. I'll do another one this week.
And if you are listening to us coming from Words About Books, hello. Ben mentioned me multiple times on the last episode.
We covered a Minecraft isekai, so if you're interested in isekai in other forms.
Both complaining and praising. So that was a fun one. Andrew, plugs?
You can find me here. I'm here. That's about it. Goodbye.
We're going to figure out what to do with those old Ramble Rousers episodes.
Yeah.
But until then, Andrew's here. What's your Twitter?
I think I'm Kermit D. Grog.
I believe so. So you can hit him up on there.
Oh, or D.
Every 2 weeks or so, he checks that out. So as I said, thanks for listening. And remember, if you find yourself in another world, I hope you know the language. I am 60% German, so...
Congratulations. Does it help you understand the language any better?
Well, a little bit. Maybe the people listening are related to me in some way. Hi.
Cut this.
My friend Hans is from Germany. Do you
Cut
know
all
Hans?
of this. Garbage.